And Ron, Erwan Le Corre, thanks for being on Fitness and Consciousness.
Hey, Ryan, my pleasure.
Um, so you're the founder of MovNat, and I think it's one of the first like systems that I guess in the modern day put together these like more ancient movements to like get us tapped into our like primal cells, primal movement, and um, I've seen quite a bit of the videos, and like I watch UFC. I've seen Carlos Condit doing a lot of the movements, and I was just when I was preparing for the show, I was looking at like the history, like where I'm assuming it's correct, like on Wikipedia where it says you got it from, and where they get it from. Can we start with just like where did you get it from? What made you take this route and start your own method?
When I was a little kid, just like any other kid, we all start that way. We start moving naturally. We start exploring that whole range of natural movement abilities, not just for the sake of fun or play, though it's the way we learn, but it's not just about exploration. It's about acquiring skills, movement skills that originally at least, would enable the human beings to navigate through the world, which is originally nature, wild environments, to not only survive, but also to thrive. So to avoid threats and to seize opportunities, to just live, right? So you have to be able to move. And that's why we have those instincts to move naturally in those very diverse ways, locomotion ways, manipulation ways, even combative ways, that enable us to move through the world, to perform physically through the world, to achieve the task that we need to achieve to just stay alive. So when you say it's ancient and primal, it is ancient because it has its roots in the from the very beginning of human evolution and before even the human species. But at the same time, those movement abilities, they're timeless. Mm. If today you would have a vital situation that forces you to move, it's very unlikely that you're going to start assuming a yoga pose to get out of a tight spot, right? Or that you're going to play ping pong, or that you're going to do some acrobatic movement. You are extremely likely to just run very fast, maybe to have up an obstacle, to climb something, or maybe to lift and carry somebody else. And that's when the true practical essence of those natural movements is revealed. It's when you face vital circumstances, and then what's left to do is to move the way you're supposed to move. All right, so back to where I start being a young human animal, moving in nature, being encouraged by my dad to climb trees and to jump off rocks and to crawl and to do all these movements. So not only it was a natural instinct like in every young child, but it was also something that was fully encouraged by my own father, which was great. And on top of that, I lived just next to the woods with boulders and hills, so a fantastic playground. Then I grew up, I do specialized sports, but I never really stopped practicing those movements, though having that approach of practicality in my physical training, doing what's practical, training the what's practical, being adaptable to a diversity of context. And then ultimately, it's in my late 30s or mid 30s that I discovered that there was actually a history of, the history of physical education and people who had trained that way, the way I train, and not only had trained it, but they had, at least to some extent, a method for training it. And I started to study it, and I realized how the foundation was great. The approach was, I fully shared the approach, but how at the same time the method needed to be updated. The communication about it needed to be updated. So that's what I've done, and this is how I created the MovNat method, because I understood that concept which I call natural movement needed a place, to be recognized, to be acknowledged in today's society, and also not only have a place in terms of awareness, but also in terms, of course, of practice and developing this practice so that we can reach a lot of people who need this kind of practice, training.
Yeah, I probably grew up very similar. There were, like with my dad out in the woods, like southern Indiana has, some hills and a lot of woods, and we would go out like almost every weekend to the big state parks and the national forests and just race up hills and push down like dead trees and balance and pick up big rocks. And so it is just interesting how natural it is, and to wrestle and box, and like you just naturally want to like fight your dad, and he'll like let you win sometimes. And
it is an instinct.
Mm-hmm.
It is an instinct to hang and climb. It is an instinct to crawl and get up and get down in diverse ways, and to push and pull heavy stuff and carry and drag and lift and throw and catch. And again, there's a whole set of locomotive and manipulative and combative skills. At least they are natural, instinctive abilities that we're all supposed to not only do when we're young, but actually to keep going, because originally it wasn't an option to possess those abilities and to keep them sharp, right? It was a necessity. Today it's not anymore. Today everything has become optional, to the point where people can sit all day and just stand and walk a few steps, and nonetheless they will survive. Nonetheless they will be fed and have other basic needs and more than that taken care for. But this is only a modern phenomenon. It's very recent that we've acquired such comfort and luxury that enable us to be physically idle our whole life without social consequences, or even just a consequence for staying alive. That is still not the case for millions of peoples in the world, and it was certainly not the case for us as a species, for the overwhelming part of our history. We had to be able to move. We had to be able to hike. We had to be able to run. We had to be able to lift and carry. We had to be able to be physical in the sense of not just, burning calories or doing machine exercise, to be physical in the sense of real world practical tasks that if you don't do it, then, too bad, because you're not going to last very long.
Yeah. Do you, so you started off, you were doing martial arts too, right? Like from, and you kind of you like put some of that into the system, or how do you, you were talking about like the combatives, do you have like some techniques that you like to use, like in the group settings? And
so your ability to defend yourself, to fight for a good or bad reason, but that ability is also one of those evolutionary abilities. You look at kids, and by instinct they flinch, and by instinct they want to throw punches or kick, or they want to grapple, and they want to wrestle. They want to try to strangle each other, or play with your joints and like both fold them and try to hurt you, right? So again, it's a perfect example of martial arts, of an innate ability that is effective to some extent in a spontaneous, in an instinctual way, but that you can turn into very efficient skills through mindful, consistent practice using technique, right? This is what martial art does. Like Bruce Lee said, at first it's just a punch is a punch, a kick is a kick. Then it's not a punch or a kick anymore. Then it becomes just a punch and just a kick. What does that mean? It means that at first you throw things just like that without thinking, without knowing if you're efficient or not. And probably you're not as efficient as you could be. Then you start to pay attention. And you realize that to make the punch or the kick highly effective, you need to analyze, understand what makes it work, what makes it killer movement, what makes it really, really good. Not only to understand the details, the principles that make a kick powerful or punch powerful and effective, and more than effective, just really efficient. And then you have to consistently practice to acquire those techniques to the highest level you can. And ultimately, you don't need to think about it anymore because it has become fully assimilated by your nervous system. And what that means is that, again, at first you do things instinctively. You may be efficient and probably not. Then you pay attention. You have to be mindful and technical to become efficient. And then ultimately, you don't have to think about it anymore. But even when you don't think about it, you're still mindful, and you can perform those movements with high levels of efficiency. So basically, you don't learn necessarily to be a great fighter by just going to a bar and offending somebody, insulting a guy, and starting a brawl. Right? You go to a martial art academy and you learn from teachers. You learn how to box, learn how to Thai box, or you learn how to wrestle, you learn how to judo, you learn how to karate, or you learn all of that. But again, those martial arts are the evolution of a primal instinct and a innate basic ability into mastered, evolved, highly efficient skills. All right. Now, if you understand that for basic instinct to combat turn into martial art, then you can apply that to any other movement. There's all these other abilities, innate abilities for movement, which I call natural movement, that we all possess to some extent, but that we can turn into skills, techniques that you master. So apply that to jumping, for instance. Anybody can jump, very much, right? But does that mean that anyone can jump powerfully, skillfully, land in a balanced way, in a stable way, in a controlled way, and jump not just in one way, but jump in multiple ways, multiple techniques, with or without momentum, in diverse direction, upwards, downward, sideways, and then landing on diverse surfaces, some stable, some unstable, some narrow, some wide, some soft, some hard, some slippery, some rugged and with good traction. All of those diverse environmental variables that you have to deal with, right? We're not just talking about jumping up and down a square, stable box in a gym, right?
Right.
So if you apply that to jumping alone, and you realize that to become efficient at jumping in diverse environments, there's a number of techniques that you need to learn and acquire and practice consistently and mindfully until they become mastered skills. Exactly the same as your primal instinct to fight turned into a martial art. Right? And now you apply that to lifting and carrying. Now you apply that to throwing and catching. Now you apply that to climbing. Now you apply that to running, to crawling, to all of those natural movement abilities. And then voila, you have the very concept of MovNat, which is to turn the full scope, the complete range of our natural movement abilities into mastered skills, so that your level of movement competency as well as physical capacity turn into overall real world physical capability, right? Competency, we're talking about the skills, how well you move. Capacity, we're talking about strength, power, stamina, energy systems, all of that. You combine both, now you have complete capability. You're really capable. You're not just great at moving, but with that strength or with that stamina. Or you just don't have stamina and strength, but your movement skills are mediocre. You have both, full set, fully equipped. It's just like being a martial artist, a mixed martial artist actually, but now it's like mixed natural movement, mixed movement skills, which, by the way, all the sports that we practice, all the physical, like strength and conditionings and all, it's mostly based on those natural movement abilities. It is not, say, Olympic lifting that gives you the ability to lift. It's your natural movement ability to lift that enables the sports of weightlifting, of Olympic lifting, or of running, of martial arts, of playing soccer, whatever. All these specialized sports and activities are enabled by our universal set of natural movement abilities.
Yeah.
And so each sport turns usually one, say lifting, in a skill. Like a mastered, efficient ability. That's a skill. So you have lifting. Then they're gonna lift one object using two techniques, for instance. Not other techniques, not carrying, not other objects. So it's very specialized. Same with martial arts. Karate, boxing, just using your fist. Okay. Karate or taekwondo, just using your legs. Karate using legs and feet. Thai boxing using legs and feet and knees and elbows and everything, which is also the original karate, etc., etc. But then they have specialized those martial arts because we have an innate ability to wrestle, to grapple, to strike and parry, right? So why do we need to mix martial arts? It's because we specialize them in the first place. Mm-hmm. If we did not specialize them, we would not need to mix them. And they are not originally mixed. So same with all those natural movement skills. It's not cross-training. You don't need to cross, or you don't need to cross-train or to mix martial arts or to mix anything if you don't specialize in the first place. So MovNat is that approach where you understand that there's a full scope of mandatory movement skills, and none of them is optional, and you will approach your training in that overall holistic way where you gotta run, you gotta crawl, you gotta jump, you gotta balance, you gotta lift and carry, you gotta throw and catch, etc., etc., etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. That is very interesting. Because I teach, I just call like martial art. I don't even put like an S at the end, and I work with like mainly like a couple like karate black belts and some other people too, but like so I'm not like trying to mess with their kicks and stuff. We work a lot on like jujitsu would be my specialty, but then that kind of puts you in a box where it's like, well, do they punch in jujitsu? Well, in my class you did, and like it's kind of funny. Like in my jujitsu class, like a traditional Japanese jujitsu, to move up in rank, we had to like break boards and break cement. And my buddy, who's a 4th degree black belt in karate, like a really good one, he never had to break boards or anything to get. So it was like this weird kind of thing. But I was going to ask you, like, so when you're working with somebody like a Carlos Condit, and he comes to you, and I don't know if he's still how often you see him, but like when he comes to you and he's I mean, his main thing is martial arts. So when somebody comes to you and they already have their sport or they already have their, what do you try to do for them?
Well, Carlos Condit was a particular case, and I trained him for 2 of these camps, and so including the one for he fought for the title with Robbie Lawler, and you know what I noticed a particular issue he had in his movement, which was completely confirmed. He was aware that he had it because this had been pointed out by his team, by his coaches. So he was not surprised when I told him exactly the same, except that their specialty is not what I do. So giving him reminders did not work at fixing him because he needed other tools. You know, these fighters are phenomenal athletes, and they have to learn so many tools and to use so many tools, and there are a bunch of tools available to up their games. In this particular case, I was helping him to become more stable in his standing stance, to be more responsive in avoiding takedowns, and to move faster on his feet by changing his stance, changing his foot position, changing the way he transitioned from one movement on his feet to the next. And that was it. So once this had been addressed and fixed, didn't need to work with him anymore because all the rest is taken care of by himself and his diverse coaches. Right? So yeah, every case is particular. So it was not about having him doing the full scope of MovNat movements because that would have been irrelevant. We have limited time. He has limited time and energy to spend. You know, he cannot disperse his practice into trainings, drills that are not strictly relevant to prepping him for the next fight. So we did a lot of balancing, a lot of jumping and landing, a lot of transitions like that, and a lot of training his nervous systems to be more alert and responsive in those particular stances and transitions. So that was, I used a lot of my karate background actually to help him with that, but also, of course, just pure MovNat training. And it just worked. I mean, the way he knocked down or out almost, what was his name? The fight just before Robbie Lawler, the Brazilian guy. And once he got his distance and it just moved forward into his face with a big elbow, and that was it. And the speed of this forward movement had been increased by his change of stance. And then with Robbie Lawler, what we did was training him with all lot of kicks, actually, a lot of kicks. So it was a particular training that totally complemented the work he was doing with his striking coach, Brandon Gibson, who's like a master as his craft, like world class, striking coach. And what I did basically was like I don't know, in the computer world, we would talk about like an add-on or a plug-in or something like that. A piece that it was very specific but essential to making all the rest work better.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. That makes a lot of sense, because I think some people kind of might get kind of like lost in the weeds. They see like Conor McGregor working with Ido Portal and think, okay, I need to move like a monkey more. I need to do, they see all these cool things, and I like that kind of stuff too. But like when you have somebody that's like an elite athlete that's coming to you, like you don't have, you're dealing with such like somebody's bringing you a Lamborghini, and you need to tune up that Lamborghini, and you don't want somebody it'd be real easy to do more harm than good, I would think. And so how do you think you developed your eye for that? How did you like pick out what to do for him?
I don't know, maybe my friend and well-renowned physical therapist and functional movement expert Greg Cook,
big fan.
once told me, you're natural. So I don't know. I have my foundation for my work was never science. It's plain observation, experiment, and it's just experiential knowledge. So it means that I don't look at numbers and data and science and surveys and all this kind of thing. That's not my starting point. That's not how I operate in terms of coaching. I look at I look at biomechanics, but again, without all the curves and all of this. I look at your points of support. I look at the sequence and timing of movement, position, tension and relaxation. I look at diversity of cues. Some are blatant and others are more subtle. That enable me to know what needs to be worked on. One would say it's intuitive, and in a good part it is, but it can be also explained and described. Say, I look at the way people breathe. I look at the way people hold themselves, and say when they move, if they move with fluidity or if they have tension. Foot placement, how the rest, whenever you want support on your hands, on your knees, on your feet, how the rest of the body aligns depending on the direction, the speed, where you want to go, where you want to land, what's the transition. There's just so many variables to look at. So I need to see, I need to look, and to observe, and that's coaching. It's one-on-one coaching.
Hi.
I got my son showing up. I think he's telling me, "Hey, it's time."
Yeah.
Athlete here. Natural athlete, natural mover.
So when you're with your, so like knowing what you know, and like playing with your kids, like what do you? Are you trying to like maybe like kind of like coach without coaching? Maybe kind of like what it sounded like your dad did with you. He was like, we're going out to the woods and we're having fun doing all these things, but really, it sounded like your dad was like a really expert coach, and maybe he didn't even know it.
Actually, no, not only. He wasn't. He just he gave me permission. He gave me an example of permission. He was not himself that good at movement, But he was always telling me, hey, when I was a kid, I would climb trees and do all these things. So he would provide the encouragement, and like from early on in my psyche, that idea that all I was doing was not only natural and okay, it was totally okay, it was actually good and desirable. So it reaches your, I did not think of it that way, but it was in the back of my mind unconsciously. So that's pretty much what my dad did to me, but he did not teach me techniques or much, except maybe I remember when he was telling me climbing a tree, where to place my feet and how to, push more from my feet and support my body more from my feet than just trying to hang and get exhausted. So this being said, when you're asking about my kiddos, no, they're still young. So Sky is 4 and Eagle is 5. My job at this point is not to make natural movement an intellectual pursuit or something technical. It is to encourage their exploration and their spontaneous acquisition and development of skills. So my support is not intellectual, it's not conceptual. It is context. It's to provide the context. So again, the permission to move naturally, to climb a tree, to jump a rock. Not only the permission, but the encouragement. And then from time to time, just early on actually, my kid was hanging, he was calling me because he was hanging to that wood rail we have just behind me. And he was scared because it was just above the staircase. And I just walked slowly toward him, told him to just stay relaxed, to not be afraid. And then I showed him what to do. I told him, hey, move your hands here. And now like put your foot down there. Like extend your leg here, put your foot down there. I just made sure that he was secure. Well, the point was to make him realize that he was not in a movement situation that he could not actually fix.
Yeah.
There was no actual danger, or there was only a risk if he did not trust that he had the ability to get out of this position. And then, that's it.
Yeah.
If I see them climb trees outside, I'm not telling them, hey, come down and you're gonna hurt yourself or get dirty and this kind of thing. If my kids start running, I might just start running with them, even if it's just 50 yards, it doesn't matter. And then show by example. They see me train, so they also jump and they crawl pretending they are jaguars, and they jump over the ditch, and they do all these things. So the point here is not coaching, it's support. It's providing the context, authorizing and encouraging what they do naturally. Later on, when they grow up a little, I will start to teach them particular techniques, which I've started doing with my 8-year-old girl. So I start to teach her techniques, and she loves to move and she loves to achieve, say, climbing something or jumping or something. And sometimes she's not too efficient, so I give her some cues and she applies them. She's like, whoa, that works right away. I'm like, yeah, I know. So would she ultimately figure it out by herself? Maybe yes, and maybe no. Because again, what's natural is not necessarily efficient.
Yeah.
Anybody can jump again, but you're not necessarily good at it, or jumping and landing. So doing 1,000 repetitions may not give you solutions to solve your lack of efficiency, especially if you just jump and count and count and count and look at the clock for general conditioning, but without mindfully applying yourself to improve your skill with each and every single repetition you do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like all these So about these little subtle cues, just like a couple like little hints. I know you got to go here in just a minute, but I'm reading for the second time the talent code, and so they were like studying these different coaches, like John Wooden, and like what's he doing? And he wasn't like one of these big like fire you up, big motivational speaker kind of guys. He was just like these like little adjustments. I think kind of like what you were saying. Put your foot here, have your feet this way, and just like these little subtle cues and like encouragement, like just at like the right times, and just but it's to see these.
I might be a little metaphorical here, but look at, say, what we call happiness, for instance. Happiness may not be the result of one big event that happens to you and makes you happy. A big nice event, something that happens to you and really nice, is going to make you happy, but then it's short-lived if you don't have a foundation in your own psyche for happiness and habits that promote and maintain that state of happiness, which is made of the accumulation of a number of little things. And those little things are both external, having little pleasures, little satisfaction, but it's also your ability to appreciate, to amplify your satisfaction of, wow, I'm eating this food and oh my God, it tastes good, and paying attention and just being grateful because you're fed with healthy food. And then you're going to go your movement, and instead of being a chore, you're forcing yourself to do. And even if it's hard, but you're like, I'm so grateful I have this ability to move and to stay strong and to make myself stronger and this and that, right? So it's an accumulation, it's a succession of little strokes, both in terms of, say, physical behaviors and choices and things you do, but also in your own mind, of how you operate, how you choose to operate your own mind that makes you happy.
Yeah.
Okay. So efficiency in techniques, especially if you work with athletes that are already specialized and already at an elite level, it's not going to be a massive epiphany or every day, or maybe an epiphany in their world would be one little tweak that is barely perceptible, that maybe people would not even notice. Just one little change in position, in timing, in sequence, in whatever, in the way you breathe, in position of your neck and head, in your line of vision, whatever it is, that brings something new on the table and improves what's already a skill, but just keeps optimizing it. So I'm not surprised that in that regard, most coaches for such athletes may be looking at little details.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. That's I know you got to get going here. So is there anything you wanted that we haven't touched on that you're wanting to get into, or?
My book is The Practice of Natural Movement. It's going to be released December 2018, finally. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I know a lot of people are as well. So it's on its way. It's coming.
Yeah, I'll be getting that for sure. It sounds really cool. So any final thoughts before we let you go? Any closing words to leave us with?
Well, I invite you to check out MovNat.com, MovNat.com. This is where you'll find all the information about the MovNat method, what we do, the workshops, the certifications that are taking place worldwide. We operate basically everywhere in the world, and then we have online coaching. We have licensed facilities. We have thousands of certified teachers around the world. So yeah, if you want to delve into this real world physical capability method, that's the place to go to where to start, MovNat.com.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming on. It was really cool. I've been a fan of your system for some time now, and I'd be glad to have you on again anytime. So I will stop the recording. I'll talk to you for just a second after I stop the recording.
That works. All right. Thanks everybody for listening, and be well, everyone.
Thanks.